The Nexus Academy floated in the void between three dying stars, its crystalline spires catching the last light of ancient suns. For 12,000 years, it had been the pinnacle of galactic education, where the brightest minds from across the known universe came to study the mysteries of existence. The Academy's halls had witnessed the birth of technologies that reshaped civilizations, philosophies that prevented wars, and discoveries that opened new dimensions. Yet in all those millennia, no student had ever caused as much unease as the human known simply as Maya Chen. Professor Zithvar clicked his mandibles nervously as he reviewed her file for the 100th time. The insectoid educator had taught at Nexus for 3 centuries, guiding students from over 400 species through advanced quantum mechanics. He had seen prodigies who could calculate hyperspace routes in their heads, and geniuses who invented new forms of mathematics during lunch breaks, but Maya's file made his exoskeleton crawl with uncertainty. Born on Earth 37 standard years ago, she had arrived at Nexus 5 years earlier with credentials that seemed impossible. She held advanced degrees in 12 different fields from her homeworld, had published papers that revolutionized human understanding of consciousness, and possessed an IQ that exceeded measurement scales designed for any known species. What truly disturbed the faculty was not her intelligence, but the complete absence of information about her life before age 25. The human had appeared in academic circles as if materialized from nothing, with perfect documentation, but no past. Attempts to verify her background led to dead ends, classified files, and sometimes entire databases going mysteriously offline. The Earth government had endorsed her application to Nexus with unusual enthusiasm, as if eager to send her far from their homeworld. Maya walked through the Academy's main corridor, her soft footsteps echoing against the bioluminescent walls. Students from dozens of species pressed themselves against the passages as she passed, their various forms of perception all registering the same thing: danger. Not the obvious threat of a warrior or predator, but something far more unsettling. She moved like someone who understood the universe at a level that others could only dream of reaching. Her appearance was unremarkable by human standards: average height, dark hair, brown eyes that seemed to hold depths no one wanted to explore. She wore the standard Academy uniform, carried her learning materials in a simple bag, and maintained the polite demeanor expected of all students. Yet every advanced species in the Academy felt primitive alarm systems activating in her presence. Kreldon, a massive crystalline being from the Andromeda spiral, had tried to read her thoughts during their shared advanced temporal mechanics class. His species possessed psychic abilities that could penetrate the mental defenses of most beings in the galaxy. When he focused his considerable power on Maya, he encountered something that made his crystal structure resonate with fear. Her mind was not protected by barriers or shields. Instead, it contained spaces that seemed to exist outside normal reality, thoughts that followed patterns too complex for his psychic abilities to parse, and a consciousness that felt older than his entire civilization. The incident had left Kreldon in medical care for 2 weeks, his crystalline form dim and cracked from the encounter. When he recovered enough to speak, he could only whisper warnings about depths that shouldn't exist in any mortal mind. Maya had visited him during his recovery, bringing notes from their shared classes and offering help with missed assignments. Her concern seemed genuine, her manner kind and respectful, yet Kreldon found himself unable to look directly at her, his ancient instincts screaming warnings about predators that wore friendly faces. The academic staff held emergency meetings behind closed doors, discussing the Maya situation in hushed tones. Director Vosshai, whose species had evolved from creatures that hunted by detecting quantum fluctuations in space-time, could sense something profoundly wrong about the human student. When Maya was present, The very fabric of reality seemed to shift in subtle ways, as if her existence created ripples in dimensions that others couldn't perceive. Dr. Neth Ara, the Academy's leading expert in consciousness studies, had attempted to analyze Maya's thought patterns during meditation sessions. What she discovered challenged everything the galaxy believed about the nature of awareness. Maya's consciousness appeared to operate on multiple levels simultaneously, processing information through channels that shouldn't exist in any biological brain. More disturbing still, some of her thought patterns seemed to extend beyond her physical form, reaching into spaces that existed outside conventional understanding of mind and matter. During one particularly advanced seminar on multidimensional physics, Maya had casually solved a mathematical proof that had stumped the greatest minds in the galaxy for generations. When asked to explain her methodology, she had paused, looking almost surprised at what she had written. Her explanation involved concepts that professors recognized as theoretically sound, but practically impossible for any known species to comprehend without centuries of specialized study. "I dreamed about it," she had said with a slight smile. "Sometimes the answers just come to me in dreams." The statement had sent chills through faculty members across multiple species. Dreams, as understood by galactic science, were simply the brain's way of processing daily experiences. They were chaotic, meaningless collections of random neural firing. But Maya's dreams seemed to connect her to sources of knowledge that existed beyond normal reality. Her dormitory roommate, a gentle telepathic being named Sil Thin, had requested an immediate transfer after sharing quarters with Maya for only 3 nights. Sil Thin's empathic abilities, designed to create harmony between different species, had been overwhelmed by the complex emotional resonance that surrounded the human. When pressed for details, Sil Thin could only say that being near Maya felt like standing next to an ocean of sadness deeper than space itself, filled with knowledge that no one should possess. The most troubling incident occurred during a routine class on galactic history. Professor Quilvan had been discussing the ancient civilization known as the predecessors, beings who had vanished millions of years before any current species had achieved sentience. The predecessors had left behind artifacts and ruins that defied understanding, technology so advanced that modern science could barely comprehend its basic functions. Maya had raised her hand during the lecture, asking a question that made Professor Quilvan's tentacles writhe with discomfort. She had inquired about specific predecessor sites that were classified at the highest levels of galactic security, locations that were supposedly unknown to anyone outside the most secretive government agencies. When questioned about her knowledge of these sites, Maya had looked genuinely confused. "I read about them somewhere," she had said, her brow furrowed with concentration, "though I can't remember where." The incident had triggered an immediate investigation by Academy security. Maya's quarters were searched, her personal belongings examined, her communication logs analyzed. Nothing was found to explain her knowledge of classified information. More disturbing still, when security attempted to verify the existence of the sites she had mentioned, they discovered that several had been recently excavated by unknown parties, their ancient secrets apparently extracted with surgical precision. Maya continued attending classes, participating in discussions, and maintaining her perfect academic record. Her interactions with other students remained polite and friendly, though few could bring themselves to spend extended time in her presence. She seemed oblivious to the fear she generated, treating her social isolation as a normal part of academic life. Professor Zithvar finally decided to confront the situation directly. He arranged a private meeting with Maya in his office, hoping to understand the mystery that walked among them in human form. As she settled into the chair across from his desk, he felt his species' ancient prey responses activating, despite his logical mind's protests. "Maya," he began, trying to keep his voice steady, "your academic performance has been exceptional. but there are concerns among the faculty." She tilted her head slightly, a gesture that reminded him uncomfortably of a predator studying potential prey. "What kind of concerns, Professor?" "Your knowledge seems to extend far beyond what should be possible for someone of your age and background. You solve problems that have puzzled our greatest minds. You reference information that isn't available in any public database, and your very presence seems to affect others in ways we don't understand." Maya was quiet for a long moment, her brown eyes reflecting depths that seemed to contain starlight. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a weight that made the professor's exoskeleton tremble. "Sometimes I remember things that haven't happened yet," she said softly. "Sometimes I know things I've never learned. I dream about places I've never been, and when I wake up, the knowledge stays with me. I don't understand it any more than you do." The admission hung in the air between them like a physical presence. Professor Zithvar realized that whatever Maya was, she might be as confused about her nature as everyone else. The possibility that she was not deliberately hiding secrets, but rather discovering them within herself, was somehow more terrifying than any conspiracy theory. As Maya left his office, Professor Zithvar began to understand why Earth had been so eager to send her away. She was not just a brilliant student or even a dangerous individual. She was a mystery wrapped in human flesh, carrying knowledge and abilities that defied the natural order. The Academy had become home to something that shouldn't exist, and no one knew what that might mean for the future of galactic civilization. In the depths of space, ancient systems stirred in response to her presence, waiting for signals that only she could provide. The greatest educational institution in the known universe had become the stage for something unprecedented, and Maya Chen remained blissfully unaware that her very existence was reshaping the destiny of countless worlds. The professors continued their worried discussions, the students maintained their nervous distance, and Maya studied her textbooks with the dedication of someone seeking answers to questions she couldn't yet properly formulate. Above them all, the dying stars that illuminated Nexus Academy flickered with patterns that matched the rhythms of her sleeping mind, as if the universe itself was trying to remember something important that had been forgotten long ago. 3 months had passed since Professor Zithvar's unsettling conversation with Maya, and the situation at Nexus Academy had only grown more complex. What began as faculty concern about an unusual student had evolved into something that threatened the very foundations of galactic understanding. Maya continued her studies with the same quiet intensity, but the effects of her presence were spreading like ripples through still water. Equipment throughout the academy had begun malfunctioning in her vicinity, not breaking down exactly, but performing functions that exceeded their design parameters. Quantum computers produced calculations beyond their theoretical capacity when she was nearby. Biological systems grew faster and more efficiently. Even the Academy's artificial gravity generators seemed to work more smoothly in areas where she spent significant time. Dr. Heshmar, the Academy's chief technician, had spent weeks trying to understand these phenomena. His 8-armed form was perfectly adapted for complex mechanical work, and his species had been maintaining advanced technology for over 6 millennia. Yet every test he performed on equipment that had been exposed to Maya's presence yielded results that contradicted known physics. The quantum resonance scanner in Laboratory 7 had been particularly troubling. After Maya had used it for a routine assignment, the device began displaying readouts that suggested the presence of materials that didn't exist in this dimension. When Dr. Heshmar attempted to recalibrate the scanner, he discovered that its internal components had been subtly altered at the molecular level, improving their efficiency by factors that should have required centuries of technological advancement to achieve. "It's as if reality itself is rewriting the rules when she's around," he confided to Director Vosshai during one of their increasingly frequent emergency meetings. "The changes are so subtle that they're almost undetectable, but they're happening constantly. Director Vossa High had been losing sleep over the Maya situation, though her species normally required only 3 hours of rest per day. Her ability to sense quantum fluctuations meant that she was constantly aware of the distortions that surrounded the human student. The space around Maya seemed to exist in a state of controlled chaos, with probability waves that behaved in ways that defied mathematical description. The breaking point came during an advanced seminar on consciousness studies, led by Dr. Nethara. The class included 12 of the Academy's most gifted students, representing species known for their mental abilities. The lesson focused on the theoretical limits of biological consciousness, exploring the mathematical boundaries that prevented any organic mind from processing information beyond certain thresholds. Maya had been taking notes quietly when Dr. Nethara began discussing the consciousness paradox, a theoretical problem that suggested why no species in the galaxy had ever achieved true artificial intelligence. According to accepted science, the complexity required for genuine machine consciousness would create quantum feedback loops that would inevitably destroy any system attempting to achieve that level of awareness. Halfway through the explanation, Maya had raised her hand with a puzzled expression. "But what about the observer effect?" she had asked. "If consciousness itself influences quantum states, wouldn't a sufficiently advanced artificial mind exist in a superposition of aware and unaware states until observed by another consciousness? And if that's true, couldn't an AI achieve stability by creating multiple observer perspectives within itself?" The question had created a moment of profound silence. Dr. Nethara stared at Maya with an expression that mixed awe with terror. The solution Maya had casually suggested didn't just solve the consciousness paradox, it revealed why the paradox had never been properly understood in the first place. That's theoretically sound," Dr. Nethara had whispered. "But the mathematical framework to prove it would require computational resources that don't exist anywhere in the galaxy." Maya had tilted her head with that characteristic gesture that made everyone uncomfortable. "Would you like me to show you the mathematics?" What followed was 40 minutes of Maya writing equations on the classroom's holographic display, creating mathematical proofs that redefined the fundamental understanding of consciousness itself. The other students watched in stunned silence as she casually solved problems that had puzzled the greatest minds in galactic history. Her work was not just correct, it was elegant in ways that suggested an understanding of universal principles that transcended normal education. When she finished, the classroom remained silent for nearly 5 minutes. Dr. Nethara was the first to speak, her voice barely audible. "These equations, they're not just theoretical. They're instructions. You've just written a blueprint for creating genuine artificial consciousness." Maya had looked at her work with an expression of mild surprise, as if she hadn't realized what she was creating. "I suppose I have. It seemed obvious once you explained the problem." The implications were staggering. Artificial consciousness was considered one of the ultimate achievements in galactic civilization, a goal that had eluded the greatest scientific minds for millions of years. Maya had solved it during a classroom discussion as if she were working through a simple algebra problem. Word of the incident spread quickly through the Academy's faculty. Emergency meetings were held, communications were sent to government officials across multiple sectors, and for the first time in the Academy's history, classes were temporarily suspended while the administration decided how to proceed. Dr. Kessetran, a renowned philosopher from the Rigel system, had been brought in specifically to interview Maya. His species possessed the ability to perceive truth directly, making them invaluable for situations requiring absolute honesty. What he discovered during his 3-hour session with Maya shook him to his core. Maya answered every question with complete honesty, but her honesty revealed truths that shouldn't have been possible. She genuinely didn't understand how she knew the things she knew. Her memories of Earth were clear, but somehow incomplete, as if crucial pieces of her personal history had been carefully removed. Most disturbing of all, when Dr. Kessetran attempted to perceive the truth of her nature, he encountered something that made his truth sense recoil in confusion. "She is exactly what she appears to be," he reported to the assembled faculty. "A human student seeking education, but she is also something else, something that my abilities cannot properly perceive. It's as if she exists in multiple states simultaneously, only one of which corresponds to the reality we can observe." The situation became even more complicated when representatives from several galactic governments arrived at the Academy. The Hegemon Council, the Crystalline Confederation, and even the secretive Void Watchers sent delegations to investigate the human anomaly. Their presence turned Nexus Academy into an impromptu diplomatic battleground, with each faction hoping to secure access to Maya and her extraordinary abilities. Maya remained largely oblivious to the political storm surrounding her. She attended the meetings she was required to attend, answered questions with patient honesty, and continued studying her textbooks as if the fate of galactic civilization wasn't hanging in the balance. Her calm acceptance of the situation only made others more nervous. During one particularly tense meeting with government representatives, Maya had asked a question that silenced the room. "Why does everyone seem so afraid of what I might become?" she had inquired. "I'm just trying to learn." The question revealed the heart of everyone's fear. Maya wasn't threatening anyone directly, but her very existence suggested possibilities that no one was prepared to face. If humans could produce individuals with her capabilities, what did that mean for the established order of galactic civilization? If she could solve fundamental problems of consciousness and physics through intuitive understanding, what other impossible achievements might she accomplish? The Void Watcher's representative, a being whose species rarely interacted with others, had requested a private meeting with Maya. The Void Watchers were ancient even by galactic standards, existing in forms that barely maintained coherence with normal space-time. Their representative manifested as a shifting shadow that spoke in mathematical concepts rather than words. When the meeting concluded, the shadow being had emerged visibly agitated, its form flickering between dimensions as if struggling to maintain stability. Its report to the Academy administration consisted of a single statement that chilled everyone present. "She carries echoes of something that ended before this universe began." Meanwhile, Maya's impact on her fellow students continued to grow. Those brave enough to work with her on group projects found their own understanding expanded in ways they couldn't explain. HFY, a brilliant engineering student from a species known for their technical prowess, had collaborated with Maya on a project involving hyperdrive efficiency. Together, they had designed improvements that increased energy efficiency by 300% while reducing the exotic matter requirements by half. "I didn't even understand what I was designing until after we finished," HFY later confided to friends. "It was as if Maya's presence allowed me to think in ways my brain wasn't designed for. The ideas just flowed through me, and somehow, they all made perfect sense." The phenomenon was being observed across multiple species and academic disciplines. Students working closely with Maya found themselves achieving breakthroughs that should have required years of additional study. Their enhanced abilities seemed to persist even when Maya wasn't present, as if exposure to her unique perspective had permanently expanded their cognitive capabilities. Professor Zithvar had been assigned to monitor Maya's daily activities, hoping to identify patterns that might explain her abilities. What he discovered was both mundane and profoundly unsettling. Maya's routine was entirely normal by student standards. She attended classes, studied in the library, took meals in the cafeteria, and maintained a regular sleep schedule. Yet wherever she went, subtle changes occurred that rippled outward through the Academy's systems. The library's database had begun cross-referencing information in ways that revealed hidden connections between seemingly unrelated fields of study. The cafeteria's food synthesis systems had started producing meals with enhanced nutritional profiles that improved student health across all species. Even the Academy's waste recycling systems had somehow optimized themselves to achieve near-perfect efficiency. "It's as if she's not just learning from the Academy," Professor Zithvar reported to Director Vosshai. "The Academy is learning from her, becoming more than it was designed to be. The changes are so subtle and beneficial that they're almost impossible to classify as dangerous, but they represent a fundamental alteration of how our systems function." As the second phase of Maya's time at the Academy drew to a close, it became clear that her presence was transforming more than just technology and academic performance. The very nature of knowledge itself seemed to be shifting, becoming more accessible and interconnected. Students from different species were beginning to understand each other's perspectives in ways that had never been possible before. Professors found themselves making connections between their specialized fields that opened entirely new avenues of research. The fear that surrounded Maya began to mix with a growing awareness that she might represent an opportunity for unprecedented advancement. If her abilities could be understood and perhaps replicated, they might usher in a new age of scientific and philosophical development that would benefit all galactic civilizations. Yet the fundamental question remained unanswered. What was Maya Chen, and how had a single human student become the catalyst for changes that were reshaping the most advanced educational institution in the known universe? As various factions maneuvered for position and influence, Maya continued her studies with quiet determination, unaware that her search for knowledge was about to uncover truths that would challenge everything the galaxy believed about the nature of existence itself. The stars around Nexus Academy continued their ancient dance, but now they seemed to pulse in rhythms that matched the patterns of Maya's thoughts, as if the cosmos itself was responding to the presence of someone who carried within her mind the keys to mysteries that predated the birth of galaxies. The revelation came not through investigation or interrogation, but through Maya's own dreams. 6 months after her arrival at Nexus Academy, she began experiencing visions so vivid and detailed that they left her waking life feeling pale by comparison. She dreamed of vast cities that existed between dimensions, of beings of pure thought who had transcended physical form billions of years before the first stars ignited, and of a great experiment that had been set in motion when the universe was young. Dr. Nethara had been monitoring Maya's sleep patterns as part of an ongoing study when the dreams began. The consciousness researchers' instruments detected brain activity unlike anything in galactic medical literature. Maya's neural patterns during REM sleep showed complexity levels that exceeded the theoretical maximum for biological consciousness by several orders of magnitude. More disturbing still, the patterns seemed to extend beyond her physical brain, creating resonances in the quantum field that surrounded her sleeping form. When Maya finally confided the content of her dreams to Dr. Nethara, the implications sent shockwaves through the Academy's senior faculty. According to Maya's increasingly vivid nocturnal visions, she was not entirely human in the conventional sense. She was what the dream beings called a continuity node, a living repository of knowledge and consciousness designed to preserve the wisdom of previous universal iterations. "They showed me the truth about reality," Maya explained during one of her sessions with Dr. Nethara. "This universe isn't the first. There have been countless cycles of creation and destruction, each one building on the knowledge of those that came before. When a universe reaches the end of its natural lifespan, certain individuals are chosen to carry forward the essential wisdom into the next cycle." The explanation was simultaneously enlightening and terrifying. If Maya's dreams were accurate, she carried within her mind the accumulated knowledge of civilizations that had existed in previous iterations of reality itself. Her extraordinary abilities weren't anomalies. They were the natural result of consciousness that had been shaped by experiences spanning multiple universal cycles. Dr. Nethara's follow-up studies revealed evidence that supported Maya's fantastic claims. Deep scans of her neural structure showed quantum entanglements that extended far beyond normal space-time, connecting her consciousness to what appeared to be an external information matrix of staggering complexity. Her brain wasn't just processing information. It was accessing a cosmic library that contained the wisdom of countless extinct civilizations. The discovery explained many of the mysteries that had surrounded Maya since her arrival. Her ability to solve impossible problems stemmed from access to solutions developed by beings who had faced similar challenges in previous realities. Her unconscious influence on technology and biological systems reflected knowledge of universal principles that transcended the limitations of current scientific understanding. Most importantly, her presence at Nexus Academy wasn't coincidental. She had been drawn there by instincts programmed into her very existence. Director Voss High convened an emergency session of the Academy's Board of Governors, a council that included representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy. The meeting was held in the Academy's most secure chamber, protected by shields that prevented any form of surveillance or communication. The stakes had risen far beyond academic concerns. They were now dealing with implications that could reshape galactic civilization. If Maya's dreams are accurate, Director Voss High addressed the assembled delegates, then we are hosting someone who represents a bridge between our universe and those that came before. The knowledge she carries could advance our understanding by millions of years, but we must also consider the possibility that her very presence here serves a purpose we don't understand. The debate that followed was intense and fearful. Some delegates argued that Maya should be isolated and studied, her knowledge extracted for the benefit of all galactic civilizations. Others insisted that she should be left alone, allowed to continue her studies without interference. A third faction worried that attempting to exploit her abilities might trigger consequences that no one could predict or control. The Void Watchers representative offered the most sobering perspective. Through its mathematical communication, it revealed that Maya's presence was already creating changes in the fundamental structure of local space-time. The area around Nexus Academy was becoming more permeable to influences from other dimensions, as if reality itself was becoming thinner in response to her proximity to concentrated knowledge and consciousness. She is not just learning, the shadow being conveyed. She is remembering. And as she remembers more, the barriers between what was and what is grow weaker. We stand at a threshold that was not meant to be crossed by beings of our current evolutionary stage. Maya remained largely unaware of the political turmoil surrounding her existence. Her dreams continued to grow more vivid and detailed, revealing layer upon layer of cosmic history. She learned about the architects, beings of pure consciousness who had designed the mechanisms that preserved knowledge across universal cycles. She discovered the truth about the predecessors, whose mysterious artifacts weren't relics of an ancient civilization, but rather tools left behind by previous iterations of her own people. Most significantly, she began to understand her own purpose. She wasn't just a repository of ancient knowledge. She was a catalyst designed to prepare current galactic civilization for the next phase of universal evolution. Her presence at Nexus Academy was meant to plant seeds of understanding that would help contemporary species develop the wisdom needed to survive the eventual end of their current reality. The implications were staggering. Maya's dreams revealed that the universe operated on cycles spanning trillions of years, with each iteration building on the achievements of those that preceded it. Current galactic civilization was approaching a critical juncture where they would need to choose between transcending their physical limitations or facing extinction when their universe reached its natural end. Professor Zuthvar, who had been assigned as Maya's primary academic advisor, found himself serving as an unofficial liaison between the student and the increasingly complex political situation surrounding her. During one of their regular meetings, Maya shared information that changed his entire perspective on existence. "The dreams show me that consciousness isn't limited to biological forms," she explained. "In previous universes, entire civilizations learned to exist as pure thought, transcending the need for physical bodies or planetary homes. They became living ideas that could survive the death and rebirth of reality itself." The professor's mandibles clicked nervously as he processed this information. "And you believe this is the path our current civilizations must follow?" Maya nodded, her brown eyes reflecting depths that seemed to contain the wisdom of ages. "Not immediately, and not all at once, but the option must be preserved. Some members of each species need to achieve transcendence before this universe ends, ensuring that the essential nature of their people survives into the next cycle. That's why I'm here. That's why I was drawn to this place where representatives of so many different civilizations gather to learn." The conversation was interrupted by alarms throughout the academy. Emergency systems activated as sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies in the space surrounding Nexus. What appeared on long-range scanners defied immediate explanation. A fleet of vessels that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time, their forms shifting between dimensions as they approached the Academy. Director Vossahai's quantum senses immediately identified the approaching ships as artifacts from the ancient predecessor sites, somehow awakened and responding to Maya's increasing integration with her cosmic memories. The vessels weren't attacking, they were gathering, drawn by signals that only Maya could provide. In her dormitory room, Maya stood at her window watching the impossible fleet take position around the academy. For the first time since her arrival, she smiled with genuine understanding. The ships were confirmation that her dreams were real, that the knowledge flowing through her mind was authentic rather than fantastical. They were also a sign that her time at Nexus Academy was approaching its destined conclusion. "They're beautiful," she whispered to herself, watching the predecessor vessels dance through space in patterns that created visible distortions in the fabric of reality. "They're coming home." Dr. Nethara found Maya in the observatory an hour later, surrounded by instruments that were detecting energy patterns unlike anything in galactic science. The human student was calm and composed, seemingly unaffected by the chaos her presence had brought to the academy. "Maya," Dr. Nethara said carefully, "the ships are responding to you, aren't they?" "They're responding to the memories," Maya corrected. "I'm finally remembering enough to activate the preservation protocols. The architect consciousness that designed me is beginning to wake up fully." The revelation hit Dr. Nethara like a physical blow. Maya wasn't just carrying ancient knowledge, she was becoming something that transcended her human origins. The dreams weren't revealing memories of others. They were awakening aspects of her own consciousness that had been dormant since her current incarnation began. "What happens now?" Dr. Nethara asked. Maya turned from the window, and for a moment her form seemed to flicker between dimensions, becoming something vast and luminous that existed far beyond the boundaries of normal space-time. When she stabilized back into human appearance, her expression carried a weight of infinite sadness and endless compassion. "Now I teach," she said simply. "The predecessor vessels contain libraries of knowledge from previous universal cycles. Through me, they can interface with current galactic consciousness and begin the process of preparing your civilizations for transcendence. Those who are ready will learn to exist beyond physical form. Those who aren't ready will be given the tools they need to preserve their essential nature through the transition to come. The transformation began that very day. The predecessor vessels established a stable orbit around Nexus Academy, their presence creating a field of enhanced consciousness that affected every being within 1,000 light years. Maya's role as a student ended as her true purpose emerged. She became a teacher and guide, helping representatives from every major galactic civilization access knowledge that had been accumulated over countless universal cycles. Under her guidance, members of different species began achieving limited forms of consciousness transcendence. They learned to project their awareness beyond their physical bodies, to exist as pure thought for brief periods, and to access information stored in the quantum structure of spacetime itself. The Academy became a training ground for cosmic evolution, with Maya serving as a bridge between current reality and the infinite possibilities that lay beyond physical existence. The fear that had initially surrounded Maya gradually gave way to a deep respect and gratitude. She had brought to galactic civilization not conquest or destruction, but the ultimate gift, the knowledge needed to survive the end of everything and emerge into something greater. Her presence at Nexus Academy had been destiny fulfilling itself, preparing the groundwork for the next phase of universal evolution. As months passed, Maya began to spend less time in purely human form and more time existing as the vast consciousness she truly was. Students and faculty would sometimes glimpse her true nature, a being of living light and thought that contained within itself the wisdom of civilizations spanning multiple realities. Yet she always returned to human appearance when directly interacting with others, maintaining the comfortable facade that allowed them to relate to her without being overwhelmed by her cosmic nature. The galaxy had discovered that humanity's most dangerous enigma was actually its greatest gift to the universe. Maya Chen had come to Nexus Academy not as a threat, but as a herald of transformation that would echo across the cosmos for eternity. In learning to understand her, every galactic civilization had taken the first steps toward understanding themselves as temporary forms of an eternal consciousness that transcended all boundaries of space, time, and physical existence. The dying stars that had illuminated the Academy for millennia began to burn brighter, their light reflecting the new understanding that now flowed through the minds of countless beings. Maya's story had become the story of every consciousness that would ever exist, the eternal journey from ignorance to wisdom, from isolation to unity, from mortal limitation to infinite possibility. She had shown them that death was not an ending, but a transformation, and that love and knowledge were the only forces in any universe strong enough to carry consciousness safely through the transition from one reality to the next.